Okay, welcome to the Historic Preservation Commission meeting of Thursday, March 20th, 2014. The time is 5:10. May we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Garpetian?
Here.
Commissioner Morgan?
Here.
Commissioner Shire?
Here.
Commissioner Vartanian?
Here.
And Commissioner Vidor?
Here.
Thank you, all present.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is report regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on or before Monday, March 10th, 2014 on the bulletin board outside City Hall. Next is approval of minutes of January 16th, 2014. Do we have any corrections or comments?
No.
Probably Arlene would, but
No.
here and there.
None. I think I just have one under oral communications. Unless I'm missing something, I think the first sentence says the representative from the Historical Society made the following 3 announcements, but I see 2.
Editing error.
Just something minor.
I can't remember if there were 2 or 3, so no.
Okay.
Okay, if there are...
Double check on that.
With that correction, I move to approve the minutes.
Second. Arlene, was that you? Seconded?
Yes.
Arlene? Okay. Commissioner Shire?
Yes.
Commissioner Vidor?
Yes.
Commissioner Garpetian?
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan?
Yes.
Madam Chair Vartanian?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Approve the minutes.
Thank you. Next is oral communications, but I have no cards. And so we'll move to comments from commissioners. Any?
Yeah, I just wanted to let everyone know that I had a great tour of Brand Library and Art Center this week. They've done an amazing job, and I want to encourage everyone to be there this Saturday, the 22nd, March 22nd, in support of the Brand Library, and it's amazing. You're gonna have a private tour, and it's gonna be from 6 to 10, and it will be a great event. Please attend and support the Brand Library and Art Center.
Thank you.
I have to concur. I didn't get a tour. I just kind of snuck in the other day when I was up there and walked through the gates, and since I had worked for the library, I knew most of the people. And it's exquisite. It's gorgeous. I mean, I can't. I have to thank all the people that have worked on it, Arlene and everyone else.
Not me.
That,
The architects.
I agree.
So I haven't had a chance to see it or sneak in yet either, so I look
Not that
forward.
we encourage that.
No, but I look forward to seeing it.
So I guess thank you all for the preliminary. I have an announcement, which I hope is being projected.
You
for
have visuals, yeah.
I have a visual, yeah. So the event that Commissioner Garpetian mentioned is this Saturday from 6 to 10 o'clock. It is our pre-opening gala. It's a ticketed event, $125 a ticket. And we hope that for those of you who can attend, that you will attend. We still have tickets left, and we're going to be selling them for another about 22 hours. So at 4 o'clock tomorrow, tickets will go off sale so that our caterer can get busy and whip up something fabulous. And of course, we will have a beautiful array of hors d'oeuvres and specialty cocktails and live music. And you will get to walk around the beautiful Brand Library restored as the sun sinks into the west. For those of you who can't make it on Saturday, there is an event next Sunday, the 30th, from noon to 4, which is an open house. And the Associates of Brand Library will be having an art book and music sale, and there will be booths. So the Historical Society will be there. I think the Doctor's House will be open as well, and it'll be kind of a fun event in the park. So
The date and time again?
that is March 30th from noon to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That is open to the public, and that is free.
And was there a ribbon cutting?
There is a ribbon cutting, and I believe that is on the 26th at 10:30 in the morning. but if you go on the city's website or to www.associatesofbrand.org, you will see that event posted as well. Does
If I may,
anyone
Chair,
know?
the ribbon cutting is on Thursday, the
Whoops.
27th at 10:30.
Wrong date. Thank you. I didn't think I had that right.
Thanks, Alan.
But we want to encourage everyone to attend at the
gala.
paid event first, then the following week they will come to the free one. So we need the support.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Well, I would just like to thank Mr. Platt. The Historical Society of the Crescenta Valley had their meeting last Monday, and it was on the Grand Central Air Terminal. And Jay Platt came up and he talked about the terminal restoration by Disney Corporation, and it was very informative, and all the members that were there really enjoyed it. And I just want to thank him again for coming all the way up to up the Crescenta Valley.
To get my passport renewed and everything.
The other thing is Rockhaven they'll be giving tours again, the Friends of Rockhaven, and if you're interested in taking a tour, they're usually on Saturdays. If you'd look up Friends of Rockhaven on Facebook, and they have certain dates that they give tours, and they're limited to the amount of people you can go see the place. And I think it's something well worth seeing in the Crescenta Valley if you're up that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we'll move on. We have no old business, so we'll move to new business. 7A is 1720 Grandview Avenue, legalization of work performed in North Cumberland Heights Historic District without permit, removal of brick veneer, installation of new windows, installation of ironwork at front entry porch.
Okay, I wanted to introduce this. This is, at least as far as I can remember, the first time the Commission has heard a legalization application in this kind of venue. So I wanted to explain that process. The Sarkeesians had applied for and received permits for certain other work on the house, including some additions at the rear, a pool, the wall that's along the side facade on the street side elevation, and then some other work happened that they didn't get permits for. And this is not an uncommon event, and without assigning blame in any one way or another, we try to look at these things as just, okay, this happened, now we have to kind of try to make it legal. So that's why we call it a legalization. When a property owner does work without a permit and they receive a violation from the Neighborhood Services Division, or if there's work going on that received a building and safety permit, but the work doesn't conform to what was permitted, then the building and safety inspectors can issue violations. So there are these two types of violations. We can look at the legalization the same way. Many legalizations occur at staff level. A lot of work gets done without permits, but when we look at it, we're like, well, yeah, we would have written a permit for that anyway, so we can then backtrack and kind of give the owners like a posthumous permit for the work that was done. The penalty is that there's a double fee assessed for whatever work is being permitted. So it's not in the Commission's jurisdiction to be punitive in any way. We're basically just analyzing work to see if it meets the Secretary of the Interior standards, to see if it conforms to the Historic District guidelines, to see if the Commission is comfortable with the work or is not, basically. In the case before us tonight, we have three aspects of the work that was done. Some windows were installed, some brick veneer was removed from the front facade area, and then some ironwork was installed at the front entry porch. If you had a chance to look at the staff report, I'll just give you a preview and then we'll look at some slides. Staff believes that the window work and the brick veneer removal is acceptable within the guidelines for historic districts. And we did think, however, that the ironwork was out of keeping with the historic district and the property itself. So I'm just going to kind of give you some photographs showing the work, and then we'll introduce the owner. You should note that the owner has provided you with 4 exhibits reflecting different aspects of the proposal. I'll let Hamlet and Donatella explain the materials in front of you, but you should know that some of these relate to other examples of porches that have gates. And the issue here is we, at staff level, have not had a chance to vet any of these, so we can't say if any of that work is original, if it's an addition that was added later, if it received permits, or if it didn't receive permits. So if the commission feels there's if the commission takes an interest in this approach and thinks that some of the work might actually be acceptable, but you want to have a basis for whether there's any precedent or any other permitted work in the area, we would have to step back and do that research. So I'd recommend that you would continue the item so that we'd have time to do that. The other handouts are a petition among the neighborhood expressing a level of support for the work that was done, and then also some concerns about coyotes in the area, which could be used as a justification for installing the ironwork. With that, if you don't have any general questions about legalizations, I'll just display some of the photographs and let you see the work. Hopefully everyone had a chance to get out to the site. The first three photographs are the designation photographs from the time that the North Cumberland Heights Historic District was designated. These serve as our baseline, as you know, for any changes that are done in the district. Basically, any work that we see here, legal or not, is considered grandfathered to some degree, although illegal work could still receive a violation, as is the case. Well, actually, this work was all done after designation, so we know that. So here you see the house. It's from 1936, I think. I don't remember. Yeah, 36. And the Historic District Survey identifies it as a minimal traditional style. I'm ready to go out on a limb and say it's one of those houses that's kind of a hybrid. It has certain Spanish colonial tendencies, but as we see it here, especially when you look at the gable over to the right side, where you have the kind of the wood at the filling in the gable, and just the general kind of modest proportions and scale of the house. It does have some resemblance to minimal traditional, but then the entry arcade and the kind of double roof over the arcade and the other wing of the house give it more of a Spanish look. So that's just by way of background. Here's a shot that clearly shows the brickwork that was located at the front facade. It clad the piers of the porch. It also clads the porch walls, and it wrapped around a certain distance on the side facade. And here you can see where it wraps around. These photos also show the condition of the original windows, which were steel casement windows. You can see the sills under the windows have this brick placed on top of it. And you can see there's a low iron gate that was at the porch entrance. And then in one of the other photos, wrong way, you can see that there was also infill between the columns on the porch. So there was ironwork at the time of designation on the porch. And then the final issue is, well, we'll get into each of those. These are some of the before and afters. The question, I'll treat them separately because they each have some different philosophical dimensions in terms of the Secretary of the Interior standards. When I first saw this house, when we were resurveying it for the designation, I just assumed that this was a brick facade, the way we often see brick facades. Once it came to our attention that the brick was gone and we looked more closely at the house, the owner represented that it wasn't a full thickness of brick facing the house that you would kind of expect if you just saw it from the street. It was actually a thin veneer of brick. And we didn't see any pictures of the work going on, so we didn't have a picture of someone saying, look, here's a piece of thin veneer brick. But when I looked at the house more closely, I could pretty much be certain, based on the profiles of these stucco sills and just the general proportions and profiles of the walls, that there wouldn't have been a full thickness of brick in those locations. It didn't make sense looking at the original or the designation photo compared to what's there now. So I'm very convinced that there was a veneer brick in place at the time of designation. My professional experience suggests that things like veneer brick are kind of a post-World War II phenomenon. I had trouble researching that. So so I can only leave it at my best professional judgment is that brick was probably added at a later date. The house very likely had stucco walls, which would be appropriate for either a minimal traditional style or even a Spanish style, if that's how this house looked originally. So we feel at staff level that it's appropriate to have removed the brick If they had come to us for a permit after doing research and finding out that it was veneer and finding out if there was any possibility that it was an original treatment, it's the kind of thing that meets the Secretary of the Interior standards if all of that's true, and we could have made that judgment at staff level. So since we were bringing this application to you for several things, we wanted to share all of the work that was done. But it's staff's opinion that the existing stucco finish is an appropriate finish for a house of this style, and that we think the brick wasn't an original finish that we would have protected based on the historic district status. One thing I want to throw in is when we do design review in historic districts, it's a bit different from when we do it on a Glendale Register property. Our goal in historic districts isn't necessarily to preserve every single property, even as it was at the time of designation. There's a little more fluidity, a little more acceptable change allowed in a district as long as it doesn't have an overall impact on the ongoing contributing status of the house. So one of the questions that you might be considering as you consider this work is, does this affect the contributing status of the house? And if you thought it did, then you might think one way or the other if you didn't think it was an issue. Moving on, and if you have any questions about each of these, that might be...
I have one question.
Yeah.
At the time of designation, was the entire house veneered, or
no,
was
just
portion of it was stucco?
The front facade, you can see in this picture...
No, I saw the pictures, but the rest of the house, like the...
Yeah,
here.
the rest of the house was stucco. So
Okay.
the veneer was across the front facade and wrapped around the side, on the north side. I can't say if it was on the south side, but that's kind of the back of house area that likely wouldn't have had it.
The rest of the house was stucco.
Yeah, and you can also ask the owner once they have a chance to testify.
Thank you.
A smooth stucco, like what's there now?
I imagine a relatively smooth stucco. It could have had a little texture. So that's hard to say. So. The windows are a tricky issue for us always in terms of replacement windows. Steel casement windows are still available, but they are prohibitively expensive for most homeowners, and it is extremely rare that we ever get someone coming in to replace steel windows like for like, which is just a fact of life with window replacement. What we consider in a historic district is the type of windows that would be appropriate in houses of that style and period. So when we think of this house changing windows, there's no new replacement material, whether it's fiberglass, aluminum-clad wood, vinyl, any of the replacement materials. None of them have the light lines and the kind of sense of transparency that steel casement windows have. So there's an acknowledgement that we're not going to be going back to that. When we looked at these windows, these are very similar to the high-quality windows that we approve in other situations. These are casement windows. They have external grids. It's called a simulated divided light, so they do have the double glass, which is usually why people are replacing windows in the first place. When we thought of this, we took into account the heavier lines, and there's a lot less glass area on this window than there is on the former windows. There are windows probably out there that could have had more glass area than what's here, but because these are actually wood windows made of wood, clad with aluminum, they have a lot of the profiles that wood windows would have, and so we felt that these were an acceptable replacement in keeping with other replacements that we've approved around the city using our window replacement guidelines, or even in historic districts when we do staff level approval for window replacement.
And Jay, on that note, have you approved this type for steel replacement windows or just for wood?
We've done this for steel when we think that wood, in a lot of houses, you have a mixture of steel and other materials. In period revival houses, one Tudor revival has steel windows, one Tudor revival has wood windows. So we look at it as, if it was something at the period, it was a choice that someone made, and it could have gone either way. And usually either one is going to be aesthetically appropriate for the house. So,
Thank you.
well, for steel windows, one thing that we have done is use a modified Z-bar frame, which is the type of window that's normally called a retrofit window, which we don't approve pretty much on any front facades, just as a Z-bar frame. But in some cases, you can cut the flange around the window and set it into into the opening. We usually do that more for efficiency's sake. It's not aesthetically necessarily the best choice, but it's an option we've used for steel casements. I don't think I've done that in a historic district yet. And I can't say that I wouldn't or that we wouldn't, but we'd have to look at that really closely.
Thank you.
Because these windows actually do come closer to looking like a traditional wood window than I think a modified Z-bar would in a steel casement opening. So here are a couple of the other shots. One of the reasons we felt this was appropriate was that the house has the deep recess that we associate with houses of the period, probably more typical of a Spanish to have a recess this deep than a minimal traditional. And the question is, we don't know what this house looked like originally, so it's kind of for the commission to use your best judgment in seeing if that's appropriate. And then finally, we have the iron gate installation. As you saw previously in the before picture, there was kind of some simple low ironwork between the columns and at the porch entry. What we have today is much more elaborate in terms of its overall design, and then obviously the height of it more or less fills the openings at the porch. While there is precedent for iron gates and ironwork at the fronts of houses, it's typically not what we associate with these properties. It is something that's more common on a Spanish colonial. It's very uncommon and probably inappropriate on a minimal traditional, so it really depends on your view of this house and its kind of stylistic heritage, whether something even like this would be possibly entertained. But at staff level, and this is more or less the reason why this is here, we were very confident that we could not approve something like this under the district guidelines or the secretary's standards. So we wanted the commission to have the opportunity to weigh in on it. And that's the last picture that I have.
So with that, we'll open the public hearing. And the first speaker is Hamlet Sarkisian. Did Donatello want to come up separately, or? Okay.
I speak?
I think, yeah.
Then my wife
You can go as a team. We have two cards, however it works.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for giving me an opportunity here to speak about this house that we love so much. You know, we're filmmakers, and my job is storytelling. And this report.
Hold on, Hamlet. Not how.
It's not.
We're fine.
How do we turn that mic on?
It is on.
Oh, okay.
Okay, it's better now. So as I said, I'm here to present my side of the story, of course. So, and every story has good, bad, and ugly, and so I'm going to start from good. Because here, this elaborate report that Mr. Platt's office has written on the house, I'm just quoting from it. Staff believes that the removal of the brick veneer does not affect the property's overall character and could possibly even bring it closer to its original appearance. I would like you to know that that's 100% true, and that was our intent. And intent is very important. We found this home, and we wanted to restore it to its original glory. We went out of our way because we saw it was built in 1936, and my wife is a designer, and so we decided to build this home to its 30s style in everything. And the Exhibit 1, which I provided to you guys, also gives you an idea how much work we've done both inside. And I would like you to pay attention to that too, because inside and outside, it's a home we live in. So from tiles, which are outdoor shower tiles, to porch tiles, to textures, colors, joists, beams, built-ins. I have Exhibit 1 taken picture for you guys. So you see, there was so much effort was made to bring that 30s design to this house.
Our exhibits are not numbered.
Mine it says Exhibit 1, interiors. I
It'll
just
be
put it
in the yellow.
the
it should
yellow
be in
folder,
the
please.
yellow,
That's the ones I brought to you guys.
folder.
It's in the
It's in the.
We think it's very important for you guys to see. This is the exhibit I'm talking about. For example, these are exterior shower tiles, all 30s, Art Deco design. We were very proud of this work, actually, to do this work. So, moving.
This is new work. I'm sorry. This is the tile is new.
Yes, all interior and exterior, all the tile work, we did it new.
And just to remind everyone, which I don't think is necessary, in the historic district, we're only considering work that you can see from the street.
I know, but it's my job also to tell the intent.
You're allowed to say whatever you like,
right?
But they have to remember to filter some of that.
Yeah. Because we're not the type of family who would buy a property, bastardize it, and make it bad, make it, not right for architectural or design aspects of it, because my wife is a designer. Quality of life is very important. So we did pay attention to that, very much so. Following on to Iron Gate at the French Porch, I'm also reading from the report that staff cannot conclusively determine, based on the district survey photos, whether this ironwork is original or a later addition. Because porches and arcades are typically open and railings are generally used only when there is a height difference between the porch and the adjacent gate, staff speculates that the gate and railings in place at designation were not original. And I would like, ladies and gentlemen, to pay attention to that, because truly there was a prefab, a Home Depot very basic fence was 4 feet tall sitting there. We have researched, we wanted to restore this 30 style, so we did research months on a row, like suitcases full of research on this thing. So on Exhibit 2, I provided to you guys on our research that we wanted to put 30 style Spanish-French mixture of gorgeous design that my wife has designed actually, and it was made in King Iron Workshop, which are Swiss-trained iron makers, and it's absolutely stunning, and we think it fits our house very well. Now the original ironwork was 4 feet tall. So we went 6 feet tall, which I will later on talk about, the whole coyote issue that we have in our neighborhood, which is a real threat to us. So that was the Exhibit 2, that the one I provided, and which shows to you in detail exactly how this was researched and on what basis was this gate was made. So let me go back to Wikipedia. Well, okay, let me put this aside. Let me go back to, I forgot to add that we had a petition and 52 families of our neighborhood. We did an open house for all our neighbors who came to see everything inside, outside. Most of the people loved what they saw. We have 52 families who signed the petition that they're not opposed, which is 63% of our neighborhood. Now, moving to the next permit. This is very important. I want you to know about the permits, because which is what brought us here. We have pulled maybe 10 or dozen or more permits on the house. This was a very elaborate work on the house because we renovated from sewage to plumbing to electrical to everything. We kind of wanted to give a new birth certificate, but keeping the old beauty of the house. So it took a long time. However, during that period, it was very stressful to build this home. And I don't like talking about it usually, but this is the place. I suffered anaphylactic shock, and due to it, I suffered a stroke. So my wife trying to give me CPR, she suffered thoracic outlet. So all of those exterior window permit issues happened just at that moment, and it just slipped through our fingers. My focus was not on it, but I had a loss of memory too. But I recovered, everything is back, which is wonderful. But this is a casualty of that period that our family went through. And it was an innocent mistake. It was not intentional. And we did offer, during the meeting with Mr. Platt, to pay retroactively back all those permits, obviously, when we met at the office. And so I just want to tell you guys that there was no intentional anything. It was just a family situation. That's what happened to us. Okay, back to shutter issue. I did not know anything about the shutters. It just came to me surprise in the report. However, we feel the same way about the shutters because this was a veneer, and I have extensive photographs of from during the construction. And the shutters were kind of also prefab, Home Depot type shutter, just nailed on the veneer. So we thought that if we want to bring this back to this original 30s style, fine stucco beauty, those shutters will not fit in with the new windows. Because the steel case windows, Mr. Platt is right, it's extremely expensive. Each piece was coming at approximately $7,000. So we couldn't afford, there were 6 of them. So with this new type of windows and the fine stucco, we just didn't think they were suiting well to the look of the house. Now, I want to also emphasize the height of the gate. It's extremely important to us because also a couple of months ago we have a veggie garden in front of the house that we cultivate our own vegetables because my wife also has an autoimmune condition, so we really eat the food that we grow at home. And so she's 15 to 20 hours a week working at the front. She was attacked with a pack of coyotes. And we have a small children, we have 3 children, we have a small pet. And this gate, the fact that she could go into the porch and stay there, that was and God save for us. So we feel very strongly about this gate. Otherwise, we would not come this far. And I would just urge you to be compassionate on this issue and to use both reason, common sense, and understand that we really need this gate over there. So I would suggest that in the report, if it's possible, please make a decision on the point number 1, which is to keep the buildings in the house the way it is now. Thank you very much. Shirley, did I miss anything?
I think I'm coming after you.
Okay.
Are there, before you go away, are there any questions from
Any questions?
I was there Sunday. It was like around 2 o'clock. Nobody was home. I knocked on the door. I just walked around the property briefly, but I admire your garden. You've done a really nice job. Do you have a gate from the street getting into your front lawn or not?
No, we have
There's
a
no gate over
37 feet setback from the street. So we're 37 feet back, the porch. So we don't have a gate on the street.
No, I understand. You have a big
Hedge
around the
to protect the veggie garden.
Right.
We had to plant. I'm already finding some strange people showing up on our front yard, trying to taste our vegetables. So thank God we have that hedge which protects that garden.
And just to fill in on the idea, gates and fences are not allowed in the setback.
Mm-hmm.
So they would not be allowed to build a gate kind of right at the sidewalk going up to the walkway.
Thank you. I didn't remember that. I walked around, but I didn't remember if there was a gate in the front or not. Okay, Thank you. That was my question.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Yes, may I add one more thing? I forgot that we did drive in our neighborhood, and I provided pictures of our neighbors, other houses that do have such high gates on their porches. And if you knock on there and talk to them, they would all tell you that they're very happy to have them because they feel safer from coyotes. And it's an issue unless you live close to mountain, unless you deal with this thing. You know, it might not sound as urgent, but it's extremely urgent to us. So the safety of this family is very important. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, the next speaker is Donatella Guichard.
Okay, so I have very little to add to what my husband told you guys. Basically, what I would like to add is a few points. The first point is that when we did the gate on the porch, it was July 2012. We had already gotten permits for 2 gates on Crestview side while we were building the fence all around the property. And because I wanted to keep some unity in the style of the house, I designed it close by to what I had originally designed for those gates. when I started to renovate this house, we were living in Santa Monica, and I was doing the drive back and forth, I encountered what I called few foxes on the street. And I warned a lady with 3 small dogs, telling her, you should be careful because I just saw 3 foxes. And she was like, what are you talking about? So then I spoke to neighbors and I said, have you guys seen foxes before around? And they were like, you mean coyotes? And I said, I guess that those were coyotes. And they said to me, this is very much of a common problem we have now in the neighborhood. They're much more numerous than before. And instead of doing the gate 4 feet, they advised me to do the gate 6 feet because they said you need a minimum of 6 feet to be protected. And I knew that I would have vegetable gardens in the front of the house, and I would spend a lot of time there, as my husband was mentioning why. And I thought, okay, for protection, I should just put it back up. Okay. I did the mistake to think that I didn't need a permit for that because basically it was same material, the same color, a design that was very similar to design we got permitted for the 2 gates on Grandview. And so I didn't think that I was making a big deal out of it, to be very honest with you. I didn't even think I needed a permit. Okay, so that's what happened for the gate. Now about the coyotes, I did get attacked twice by a pack of coyotes. It did happen. And I ran to the porch, closed the door, moved the gate, and just after, like, I don't know, 10 seconds of me moving the gates, they left. So it was insane. It was absolutely insane. Once I was with my dog, and the other time I was alone. Anyway, so regarding to the stucco, the same mistake. I basically did the same mistake because we had a permit for the rest of the house. And I didn't know much about the style of this home, basically. When we bought it, they had done so much renovations over the years. I was confused myself. I was the one part is like Spanish, the other part is traditional, another part is a little bit southern west. So I was like, what direction am I going to go? And then when we got the smooth stucco permit, I was like, okay, so we're going to go towards more of the Spanish style, but not too strong, because it's not like we had very much historical details on the house that was telling me that it was a historical proven house from that era. Though I knew it was 1936, and I knew this era very well in design. I've been renovating apartments, houses in France for over 20 years, and that was my specialty. So I basically researched for the front fence what would be matching the best this era, and I came out with that design. The stucco, we got the permits for the rest of the house. So when my people said, now we're in front of the house, I didn't think, oh wait, I need to go for another permit. So I didn't say anything, and they kept doing that, except that I checked on the veneer, on the brick before this. They came to me, and they said, this veneer is falling off. So what do you want us to do? And I said, of course, there's nothing we can do for this veneer, so we have to take it out. So that's what we did. Now, the story with the windows and the permit, I guess that my husband explained to you, we had a health crisis that we've never encountered ever before. And I was thinking more of that than the permits for windows. That's what happened. But then, though, when I did the windows, I also paid attention to reproduce the design of the windows. That was from beginning of my story with this house, my intention was to make this house beautiful. It was to make this house legitimate to the era when it was built. And it was to preserve the rest of the community. I didn't want to make something that would be offending to any other style of the neighborhood. We got the historical preservation district vote after we bought the house. So when we bought the house, we knew it was in the talks, but we didn't know that it would be voted or not. What else? I think, oh yes, the shutters. I am completely against those shutters because for me, they have no historical value. They don't bring any beauty to the era of that time. Because this house has been a lot butchered over the years with some additions, some change of roof, and all that, I had to go to a directions, and I chose the Spanish, more of the Spanish style, and that will not fit at all with the Spanish style. It will be historically awkward to have shutters on those windows, except if they could be in wood and they could be closing down all the way, and they could be done the way that we used to do it, in the 30s in Spain, but that's not the case. We cannot do that with this type of windows. So I think that's it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Questions?
Does anybody have any questions?
We will be
for the
commenting
speaker?
after
Okay.
the-
Well, I just want to make sure that we don't have to reopen the public hearing if you have any questions for the speaker.
I don't. No, thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Okay, the next speaker is Keith Soren.
Hi there, good evening.
Good evening.
I'm a neighbor. I live down on Grandview, and I went over to look at the house, and I'm just curious, and I know probably one answer, but have you all gone to see it? Sort of a question I thought would be worthwhile since these folks obviously are concerned about it. I'm also a Rotarian, so I'm here, I guess, on a couple of ideas. One is to make sure, since this is my first Historic Preservation Commission hearing, probably won't be the last, that everyone gets a fair shake. It's a fair hearing and a hearing of the facts. And as a Rotarian, we have sort of a four-way test of looking at things, and I just maybe to give some perspective. First, the question we ask when we're facing a difficult question is it the truth? In other words, do we have all the facts? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? So that's the context that we try to look at a situation when something comes up that seems to be not maybe black and white or not easy to determine. And one of the things I find sort of fascinating is I went through and looked at all 89 homes that are on the survey. And I must confess that I was sort of puzzled having gone to the house and looked at how nice it is, and then to hear the grounds for how it's being it's called into question. Some of the homes that are on the survey really need some help. And I guess going back to the four-way test, given that apparently the Preservation Commission's task is to preserve the overall integrity of the neighborhood, it just seemed to me that I couldn't rationalize why these folks were being put under the microscope, when as a realtor, I can tell you the number of homes that have gates that go floor to ceiling. Now, they may not necessarily be in that particular neighborhood, but either on Meridero or on Bel Air, I don't understand why it seems to me these folks in this particular case are being put under such scrutiny when there are many homes that I looked at that have big aluminum gates or have other things that I find to be much more troubling, realizing they're grandfathered in. But as I say, my goal was to come here and to meet you folks. Some of you I know, some I don't. And also find out how it works, because I'm sure we're going to have more situations that are similar to this. So thank you very much for your time. I look forward to hearing a positive outcome.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Margie Simplin. I'm sorry, I can't. Simpkins. Okay, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Margie Simpkins. I am a resident of Northwest Glendale. I'm a lifelong resident of Northwest Glendale, specifically within 1 mile of the subject property. I currently live just one house outside of the 500-foot radius. So my signature is not on that petition because I am one house outside. I went door to door with this petition, or it's not really a petition, it's just I just wanted to weigh in and see how the neighbors were feeling. I was a part of the historic district for the North Glendale Cumberland Heights. I was part of that committee that went door to door and gathered signatures to advance that cause. So I have a lot of sensitivity to the neighborhood. I brought Donatella and Hamlet to that neighborhood. They were originally came from Santa Monica. They were looking possibly in the Woodlands, maybe in Pasadena. I got to spend some time with them. I found them to be charming. I found them to be people of integrity. I found them to be a high aesthetic, and I thought they would be a perfect contribution to my neighborhood. And this house that they bought is a house that never hit the market, that I was able to put the two parties together, and I'm thrilled with what they've done. Absolutely thrilled. And as I went door to door to every signature that's on that list, I want you to know what I said to everyone that answered the door is, you know what, I'm not the owner of this house, so you can let it fly. You tell me you're opposed, you hate it, you don't hate it, you don't care, you want me off your porch. That's fine, because this is in my house. And I think that gave people a sense of, you know, they weren't going to get in an argument from me, and there is not one person that said, I can't stand it, I can't believe what's happening to this town, this is awful, this is hideous, this is horrible. Nothing. And then Donatella got on Nextdoor Glenwood, which is our digital watch. And even though I wouldn't have done that, and I didn't say that to her until just now, I don't think I would have done that. They opened it up to, you know what, we're going to have an open house. Everybody come see. And that gave whoever it was that is the complainer, or if there's someone who really has an issue with this, that gave them ample opportunity. They didn't have to come in and make a big deal or confront Donatella and Hamlet, but they could have shown up and maybe not said anything, had a little glass of wine, had a glass of water, and leave. I was there. No such person showed up. I do not believe that there is any resistance to those iron gates on the arcade. I don't know. I do not believe that there's any resistance to the smooth coat stucco. I don't believe there's any, I don't believe that anyone feels like the historic overlay ordinance has been violated. I know for a fact there are 9 houses on El Merodero, and keep in mind, I've been in Northwest Glendale since 1955, and so I've had plenty of opportunity to walk these neighborhoods. There are 9 houses on El Merodero that those are the gates on those arcades that were the gates on those arcades in the 60s. And I venture to guess that those were the arcades that were originally put there. So I am in support, and I favor, and I hope that the Commission will realize that Donatella and Hamlet's absence of not pursuing the permits was really just a misunderstanding. And I do not think that they should be asked to take that gate down. Thank you.
Thank you.
A quick question.
Sure.
Are you a realtor?
I am.
Oh, good. It's good to see fellow realtors come out and voice their opinion on issues. It's not mine, so it's good to see you guys here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and the next speaker is Harold Ginder.
Yeah. Ladies, gentlemen.
Thank you.
I live next door at 1714 Grandview, and I've known the Wilsons that built the house. I've known the other people that have bought the house since then, and nobody has done anything to improve it as much as it's been improved recently. And that, I guess, the only, from what I gather here, what has been said, the only thing in question now is the iron gate. Coyotes jump a 4-foot fence. They don't jump a 6-foot fence. Now, and I don't know anybody here personally or casually that could design anything that looks any better than that. So if everybody has an idea of what you could design that's going to be 6 foot tall to keep the coyotes out that would look any better than that, have at it. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, the public hearing is closed. Comments from commissioners?
I have a couple of questions. The lady indicated that they had a permit for the gates on Crestview side. Is that correct? The style of those gates, are they in keeping with the ones in the front?
I'll trust the speaker. I don't remember those gates specifically. We did approve those gates as part of the construction of the wall along the side yard.
So they had a permit for that gate and the wall on the side, on Crestview side.
Yes. Staff's concern is not so much with the aesthetic appearance of the gates, but with the sense of caging in the front porch.
I understand. I just wanted to know if these are in the same style as the rest of the gates on the house.
As far as I know.
Okay. And all this work was done after they finished with their work with permits and they got finals for it?
It's a complicated permit history here, and I can't address that specifically. I know that some of the inspectors saw work that was done without permits, so some of the violations were issued from building and safety. I believe there was a complaint from someone in the neighborhood that went to neighborhood services about the work. So there could be multiple points where the complaints were made.
Because this is an interesting case. I've never seen it this way, that if they have permits for some work to be done, before they get their finals, they have other works being done without permit, and yet do they have a final for the work they pulled permit for?
Yes, there's always a final inspection of the work, but for example, if the pool work was being inspected and the inspector entered through the side gate, they very well might not have seen the front of the house to notice that there was other work going on there, for example. Can't speak to what happened, but
it wouldn't apply in this case.
It's definitely a possibility.
Yeah. Okay. That's all I have at this time. Thank you.
Well, I have a question on the shutters. They kept referring to them as something out of Home Depot, but aren't the shutters earlier than that, than Home Depot? I mean,
I'm looking at photos, so they look to me like wood shutters. Shutters, by their nature, are kind of a prefabricated, product, even back in the day. The reason that we added that to the discussion was not so much because we can prove that these shutters are original to the house. If the brick veneer is not original, we can't say there were shutters there before. But when we think of the minimal traditional style, the wood siding and the gable, that appearance often goes hand in hand with shutters. But most importantly, we felt that when you remove shutters, and I'll show a picture of the front facade. We often find when we're just doing general design review, whether it's a historic property or not, when we're thinking about sense of proportions and window-to-wall ratio in terms of the window opening versus the area of wall, that shutters often kind of can give a balance that allow a punched window opening, in this case kind of a square opening in a relatively wide wall. It kind of creates a more horizontal emphasis that kind of works with the design of the house. So in the case of the shutters, it's more, they were there at the time of designation. They created a sense of balance and proportion at the window openings. They're appropriately located on the facades that aren't covered by the porch. It would be kind of silly to have shutters under the porch,
right,
usually. So we just felt it was appropriate to bring that appearance back.
I have a few comments. Well, first of all, I want to say to the owner and the other speakers, thank you for all of your time and effort and passion. Obviously, to renovate your home and to do the extensive petitioning and questioning of the neighbors, obviously that shows your passion for your home and your residents, and the intent, obviously, is for you to really bring up your house to a better look and to, I think, update it, and that is to be commended. I just wanted to go back to really why we're here, and it isn't a view or a a decision of the people or a preference of the people or of the neighborhood. We're really here because we've got city codes that are facing us and obviously things that we've got to abide by. So obviously, as much as we may personally love what you've done from a standpoint of being a great homeowner and improving your home, we've got to take a step back and say, you know, what does the code say? Why are we here? What does it mean to be in a historic district? What does it mean when you've got a contributing home in that district? And there's obviously rules and codes that we've got to go along with as far as obtaining permits for work, because what that gives us to ahead of time is the opportunity to weigh in on design features, giving you or meeting your objective for updating the home or renovating it while doing it in keeping with the original historic character of the home. So unfortunately, because this is kind of going backwards, the work's done and now we're here to take a look at it. Obviously, it's unfortunate because now you don't have the benefit of hearing from us what could be done to be in keeping with the historic nature of your home and, you know, be in line with what you're hoping to achieve. So unfortunately, I think, you know, our discussions today have nothing to do with you as a homeowner or your, you know, great enhancements of the home, but it's really us maintaining the city's codes and responsibility. So just keep that in mind as we have conversations up here.
No, you can't.
No.
Public hearing's closed.
What I'd like, I think what for the commissioners, what I think we should consider is here, if this home was a minimal traditional style, and that's really what we're kind of, that's the bar, right? That's what this home was and is contributing in the historic district. The homeowners have clearly decided to take this to a more Spanish style. Yes.
I think I didn't express myself completely.
Okay.
The minimal traditional style is sometimes thrown. It's a style that it's hard to say when it began. Mm-hmm. Usually late 30s. 36 might be a kind of earlier example, but in general, how's the period revival styles after the Depression started getting kind of less detailed, less complicated. And within the minimal traditional style, you have examples of Spanish minimal traditional, Tudor minimal traditional. So I forgot to indicate that there is a Spanish variant of the minimal style. Sorry.
Thank you. So they've clearly, in their design choices, taken it more to a Spanish style direction. As we go through the different items that have come before us today, I just want to kind of give my thoughts and opinions on this. First of all, with the removal of the brick, I agree with staff's position that that's probably not detrimental to the home if it wasn't on all sides and it was, you know, a thin facade of brick. I'm okay with it being stucco and find that to be acceptable. As we talk about the windows, as I look at the windows and the window shutter combination, I think typically you've got shutters offsetting a very thin, streamlined, elegant window. And so they kind of go together as a package to me. And like Jay, you mentioned, it creates balance from the window to wall ratio. If you take the shutters off of that window on the front, you can see pretty visible in that first picture. The window is quite small for the entire expanse of the wall. As far as the windows specifically, I mean, they're beautiful windows for what they are. I don't agree with the style chosen because of the heavy framing, not just of the windows, but of the window itself. And you've lost a lot of light. It's very heavy for, I think, a house of this scale. And you've lost kind of the elegance compared to the original windows. Now, whether it's steel or wood, I think a better choice could have been made to really retain that elegant, streamlined look for a minimalist home, whether it's got Spanish tendencies or not. And so now I'm faced with the challenge of, do you add shutters back to quite heavy window, or is the whole assembly wrong? And should the windows be redone to match that very thin, beautiful, streamlined elegance, adding the shutters, which gives you that wall to window ratio and creating balance? So I think I'd like to hear from some of the other commissioners on that standpoint, because I think we've created ourselves a different challenge that we're having to review. On the ironwork, I appreciate again all the research you did in showing the iron styles in the neighborhood and other homes that have iron enclosures to them. As I look at the pictures, they are all very much Spanish style, which to me in here indicates they would be original, as it looks like it very fits the style here. There isn't one example where an entire open porch or open kind of colonnade there would have been had iron enclosing every single opening on it. So I do have a trouble with the design that was selected, the height and how I think how overpowering it is for that open-aired breezeway porch that it would have been once. So I would agree with the staff on that the iron should come down or be done more keeping with a minimalist architectural style. And I think also is the elements themselves are beautiful, each one separated, but for this home and for this historical style, I just think as a whole it's taken the house in a completely different direction than a contributing historic home. So I have one question for you, Jay, before I hear from my fellow commissioners. What is the opportunity that if, depending on decisions today, or if we table it, what is the opportunity to remove a contributing characteristic or contributing status of a home to a historic district if so much has been done? Or are we trying to avoid that in encouraging things to be made right so it can still maintain its contributing status?
Yeah, I think one of the basic guidelines in districts is we don't want contributors to become non-contributors while the commission is watching and approving. So the goal should be to keep the contributing status. When we actually work with the survey teams that go out, there's no magic number of how many contributing features there are and how many have to stay and how many can go. Generally, the simpler the style of the house, there's less individual kind of decorative, ornamental, architectural elements that tend to add up to a house that has, oh wow, there's lots of character-defining features. So as features are removed, it becomes a bigger change to the overall character of the house. With regard, we do have some leniency with regard to windows, which I think I mentioned before, because we know with new windows, I'm not saying that the windows were installed are the best example of what could have gone in, but we also know that it's extremely unlikely, and if we started expecting people to replace windows with steel windows, we'd probably hear from City Council and tell us we're going in the wrong direction. So there is some latitude in terms of changing or altering character-defining features. It's kind of the Commission's role to make that determination if you think it's gone too far. But we don't have a provision right now to kind of take the house, like knock it down to non-contributing status, and obviously we should avoid that. So.
Thank you. Those are my comments.
Thank you. Okay, I'll make a few comments. You mentioned quite often 30s style, and I'm in the context of historic districting and architectural styles and defining features. I'm having trouble getting my mind around 30s style because I don't think the decade really is what is relevant here. I mean, in the 30s in California, there was a real, kind of conflagration of styles going on. The country was changing. We were in the middle of a depression. We were also coming out of a depression. And there were a lot of transitional styles, and one of those transitional styles that's defined really is not defined in the context of the decade of the 30s. I mean, you had Art Deco, you still had the European revival styles being built in the 30s, and you had minimal traditional. So, to Desiree's point, I'm looking at the guidelines, the design guidelines that really define how we look at homes, contributing structures in historic districts. Your home is defined as a minimal traditional home, and it actually has a lot, or had a lot of the features of a minimal traditional home, and that doesn't mean it can't have a little bit of eclecticism. Every house in Southern California is eclectic, but the style is minimal traditional. It's not 30s style, it's minimal traditional. That's the architectural style. It's not decade specific. So the question becomes, is what you're doing in principle adhering to the style of the house? I kind of tend to look at it the same way that my fellow commissioner who just spoke looks at it. I think that there is some latitude in the placement of the brick. Whether or not the brick was there originally, we don't know. Maybe it was, and it would have been appropriate, but it's not inappropriate for it not to be there. The windows, I find the choice interesting, but I'm naive about these types of windows, and I would ask the question, is there a clad or wood window available now that may not be steel casement, but replicates the minimal spare look of the typical minimal traditionalist window with the divided lights, but the very, open, light, welcoming, very thin frame around the end, and that if there is something that visually looks the same as the original windows, that would have been the correct way to go if you were following the historic district guidelines. Now, you said you moved in, you were aware of okay, I can't ask questions, but I think the owner said that they were aware that there was a historic district pending.
Right.
So, not to repeat myself too many times here, but there is a set of guidelines that's extremely succinct and well defined as to how one defines architectural styles in a historic district. And so I would have to take exception to the window choice as well, and that brings up the dilemma of the shutters also. I think the shutters are a good idea, and they're certainly a defining feature of this style of house, not 30s, but minimal traditional. But you have put on kind of a European revival style window with divided lights. So, there's that. Then we get to what's next? The gates. Now, for me, again, you're really deviating quite a bit from the minimal traditional style here. And although we have eclecticism in minimal traditionalism, the gates are quite European revival style, and the massing is quite large for something that close to the house. You mention a lot of gates in the neighborhood, and I think a lot of those gates are driveway gates or gates that are more in the front of the house. Some of them are, some of them aren't. The gates do not seem appropriate for the style of house. And with house design, the whole is often greater than the sum of its parts. Yes, you can say it's eclectic, and I want to add different elements because it's okay, but then you have the overall style of the house. And whether or not you're able to maintain the principles of that style is the question we're dealing with here. I'm really focusing on what the guidelines, the historic district guidelines say. And I think with the windows and with the wrought iron gate in front of your door, there's some issues here with the choices that were made. How we deal with that, I'm not sure, but looking at it strictly as within the confines of a historic district in a contributing structure, I have some concerns about those 2 points.
It's a conundrum. I have to agree with my fellow commissioners when it comes to the windows. The house to me is, and I am not as architecturally savvy as some of the other commissioners on this, it's changed the whole house feature to me. I look at those windows and I think, well, would they be appropriate with shutters? The staff says maybe so, but the window to the ratio of the whole thing with shutters makes it entirely different. They're very thick. I too live in an area where there's coyotes. I lived up in Chevy Chase Canyon where there are coyotes, and I also lived I live up now in the Crescenta Valley where there are coyotes come up and down our street every day. So I share your concern about that, but I'm the same thing with the iron railings and the gates. It's very massive. I'm just going to have to listen to what we intend to do. I'm not sure whether or not I share your concerns for your safety, but as far as the historic guidelines go, that's one of the things that isn't quite factored in. So I'll just leave it at that at the moment.
Thanking the owners for all the, thank you. I'll just start by thanking the owners for all the care and consideration you put into the changes you've made on your property. I had the opportunity to walk around the entire property. I know that they've taken a lot of time to really think through. I feel that all of the work was done at a very high level. And as far as the facade goes, for me personally, I know the brick veneer, probably was not original. And I don't necessarily have an issue with that, but for me, the brick veneer and the shutters and the scalloped wood detailing at the gables sort of makes the look. But that said, Jay, I think you mentioned that we could look at this as a compilation, minimal, traditional. Oh, could we go back to the front of the house? Sure. Yeah, where we could see the right side that has the gable with the wood siding. And
there we go.
Not only there at the front, I think on that below the gable at the front, that wood siding actually has some nice scalloping detail on it and maybe some cutouts, if I recall. And then as you move around to the north, it continues, I believe, around to the side.
Let's see if we have a shot of that. Some siding between the two roofs, and then this shot doesn't show us, but there should be in this side gable. There should be.
Yeah, I think maybe it was there. And then Jay, as you pointed out, I think the main body of the house with sort of that double roof line and the porch with the heavy columns gives us more of the Spanish.
It seems.
If we want to sort of, look at this as a Spanish variant compilation. So also hearing the point about the windows, short of steel casement replacements, Jay, and you're, the expert who deals with this on a daily basis.
Tragically, yes.
I think I heard you say that we don't necessarily have any better.
Well, in terms of, and this kind of addresses Commissioner Vidor's kind of question, we don't have any replacement for steel windows that looks like a steel window except for new steel windows. And we recognize that that's, in most cases, that's not coming back. There are windows that would have more glass to window area than the windows that were installed. When we were looking at it, we did think they did take care to try to match the Munton details, where the grids have similar pattern, same number of panes in each window. When you look at the space from the sides and the head of the window down to where the glass starts, there would be windows out in the that are available that could have a little more glass than this. We recognized that when we were trying to make our staff determination. We thought these were it's a matter of a couple of inches one way or the other if the windows were to change out, what the difference would be. But it's well within the Commission's purview to ask for that change if you think it's the appropriate way to go.
So I guess the other, if the owners had come in and suggested these windows at the counter, would that decision necessary?
In a historic district?
In a historic district.
We might have tried to get something that had a little more glass, but this is the type of window that we do approve, and that's kind of what helped guide the staff report decision. This is close enough, even if it's not 100%. In general, we don't have enough information about the different manufacturers to know all the different models and all the different variables that are out there. So we kind of work with what the applicants bring to us. We focus very much on making sure that windows are recessed so that they're similarly placed to what was there, or in this case, these are actually recessed more than the steel because they're replicating what a wood window would have looked like rather than the steel, which is a little closer to the face. We look very carefully at the grid pattern and the size of the grids themselves. And again, steel windows have these wonderfully thin grid lines that we're never going to get with a wood window or with a replacement window. The only issue I have here is really the just the size of the amount of frame around the outside of the opening.
So for me personally, I am sorry to see that the steel windows are gone because they are something that's very difficult to replicate. They are very much of the era, but I think the owners did, their best to try to replicate what was there. The shutters, I think we all might have questions on that, and I'm not sure, Commissioner Shire, you raise a good point that the shutters may look awkward. Jay, do we have a picture of the whole, or where the shutters should be
well, we have
the
the shutters on the two windows at the kind of northwest corner, and then we have the shutters at the front bay facing toward Grandview, which is right there. And then it looks like there were some little shutters next to this. I don't know if it's a bathroom or closet window there. And again, shutters are not a typical feature of Spanish houses, but we see them on Spanish-style houses. They are a typical feature of minimal traditional houses. And staff's thoughts about the shutters was really more about the balancing, their ability to create a balanced composition more than about what's exactly appropriate for the style of the house, because I think if you look at it that way, it could go either way. If shutters were replaced, the expectation would be that they were finished to match the window finish, so that there was kind of a unity between them.
I think you were suggesting that maybe you feel the windows are larger now and the shutters would not really be balancing.
Well, I think from a design perspective, as you look at the original steel window, it's very elegant and streamlined, and the shutters provide some weight to a very light, airy window, and it's that whole combination that is what that style is about. So for me, with the new windows, I think they're completely the wrong choice. I mean, you can get windows with a thinner frame to the window itself and a thinner frame all the way around the window, and now you've got that doubled up twice. You've got probably almost 4 to 5 inches of frame around the whole window. So yeah, my question in my head is, do the shutters add more mass to already a very heavy window? It just doesn't seem like the appropriate combination. And so now I'm torn with, we've lost this, minimal traditional style entirely. It's going towards, I guess, the Spanish, but I can't really even say that I'm not sure adding shutters to it is the right way to go. And I would have never, had this come to us for our input, I would have never approved those windows. It would have been a streamlined wood window. If it has to be wood and not steel, fine. That had shutters, that the whole combination was still in keeping with that initial style.
The district guidelines specifically allow us to move to alternate materials besides wood.
Yeah.
For example, if a house originally had wood, we could look at other types of materials. So there's a base acknowledgement in the guidelines that replacement windows are not necessarily going to be exactly what was there before. So this is a different kind of level of difference.
Well, and I just happen to have the design guidelines in front of me for minimal traditional style, and it does say window replacements, when necessary, should be wooden divided light sash or steel casement that match the profile of the original windows as closely as possible. And we did talk about how there could be windows that have, a narrower frame around them. So I guess I'm going to say that I was originally inclined to replace to put the shutters back, and that's where I was originally coming from. And I'm still a little on the fence about that. I will say that as far as the ironwork at the porch is concerned, I understand the need from a safety and security perspective. It sounds like what was there before was something prefabricated, and although it was lower and may not have been as overwhelming, we have a high quality, I think these are custom made and from a design perspective well thought out. And again, I understand the security issue, so I personally don't have a problem with the gates around the entryway.
I think we need to decipher the difference between quality, and which might go with more elaborate detail in ironwork and style, and the minimalist approach, which may look more inexpensive because it's minimal, but it's streamlined and I think fits the architecture. As you look at that whole facade of the house, I just have a real concern with the heavy iron filling in every single section of that open porch area going up to the house. If you look at the original minimalist photograph, the house today looks nothing like it did. And if we're trying to say, in a historic district, we're trying to keep these properties at least with some kind of tie to what they originally were, that renovations should really be more restorations and trying to keep what it is or bring back what it is, not shift and change the style so dramatically. I think the iron absolutely has to be redone.
Jay, were the hedges there originally?
No, the hedges are new. The hedges were brought to the attention of neighborhood services kind of as they were going in. Mm-hmm. The city at this time, even in historic districts, doesn't have any ability to regulate landscaping. The issue that was brought to the city was when you're on a corner property, sometimes hedges can create traffic problems in terms of visibility to the adjacent street. So one of the traffic people went out, looked at it, realized that the view wasn't being obstructed, so the notice was removed. So there's no official problem with the hedges.
I guess
and at this time in a district, we don't have any ability to say no.
I guess I also just want to, I guess one thing we can also think about is the fact that we're not looking at an individual designation. So it's not a Mills Act property. It's a contributor in a historic district, and I think we are a little more, there is a little more fluidity in those changes as well. We want the contributor to still fit within the character of the overall neighborhood. And so I think we just need to look at that. The house itself has changed. For me, again, I think just the brick veneer coming off has made it a huge change. But again, we don't know if that was original or not. And so, and I hadn't really thought about, Jay, when you mentioned, when you really kind of sort of pinpointed what we had going on with this home as sort of a combination minimal traditional Spanish. And maybe now the Spanish elements have been brought more to the fore.
This house could have had a Spanish tile roof at some point, and then we'd all look at it and say, yeah, it's a modest Spanish. Yeah. Maybe not even calling it minimal traditional. Minimal traditional was the style name assigned by the surveyors back when Cumberland Heights was surveyed originally, when we did the survey update for North Cumberland Heights, we basically accepted their initial professional judgment and just kind of kept going with it.
Right. So it's I guess it's kind of, yeah, it's a transitional. So
But that's a whole other story.
That's the truth.
I think when, if I may, Madam Chair, I think when they purchased the house, they had a different idea in their minds. I don't think they liked the veneer, the windows, the shutters, the gate that was there, prefabricated or Home Depot gate or what it was. And I think this is what they had in their mind when they purchased the property and was in the transition of becoming a historic district or overlay zone. And what I'm struggling with is most of this work was done without a permit. If they came in and asked for this, they might have gotten everything without, or most of it without any issues. The gates are, that's why I was asking the question, the gates are basically matching what was permitted on the side of the house. So as far as closing it off, it's not my style. I don't like it like caged in like this, but as far as I have a little dog, I walk him at night, I always carry a stick. We live in the woodlands, we have coyotes. But I wouldn't put a gate like this in front of the porch of my house. But my question is, since this is going towards a style all by itself, like minimal Spanish traditional or European traditional, would this house, the way it is, still be, would it lose its contributing status the way it is right now? Because I think that's the biggest question we have, that we're trying to keep the number of contributing homes in historic districts. The question is, would it lose its contributing status?
And there's a double answer to that. If this house were surveyed today with the existing, everything looking the way it does, I think it would be called a contributor by most professional preservation consultants, who are also looking at things like mass and scale and how things fit into the neighborhood, and recognizing that while the ironwork's there, it's not like they knocked out the columns and put in flimsy iron columns or something, which is a bigger change from the original. But I think the commission also has to look at the tradition of porches and arcades, and one of the things that the design guidelines does specify is that porches are traditionally open, inviting kind of features of a property. And while we all understand and respect safety issues, we don't see that necessarily this is the case, that everyone who has an arcaded porch is all of a sudden trying to infill it with ironwork. And when we look at the examples in the neighborhood, they usually are on more traditional Spanish houses, and usually kind of at the entryway to a front courtyard or to the front door, but generally not enclosing all sides of kind of a porch that runs alongside of part of the house. So that even if you felt that the house would remain a contributor if the ironwork stayed, it's still part of the commission's determination to see if this ironwork is appropriate to the overall character of the district.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
Well, if there's no more conversation, are we ready to make some kind of a motion and a vote today? Is there any need for further research like Jay had mentioned before? Do we have everything in front of us?
What I could do is similar to what we do at the Design Review Board hearings, is read back to you my best understanding of the general discussion, and then perhaps fine-tune some of the points based on that. And I could, if you have questions, I could provide options for possible ways to proceed. Starting with the easy one, the brick veneer, I didn't hear that anyone was particularly concerned about its loss, and unless I'm wrong, I think we could move to legalize. That could be part of the motion, would be to legalize and approve the removal of the brick veneer. There was a little less certainty about the windows. While I think there's recognition that these windows look very different than the original windows, I think some commissioners were possibly open to them as a replacement, but I didn't hear a consensus one way or the other. So if you wanted to focus your discussion on that, just to kind of come up with consensus if possible.
I have a quick question about the windows. The original windows, were they operable or they were fixed?
Yeah, they were casement windows that had
They
fixed
open out.
panels toward the center and casements on the side.
Did they have casement that would open?
Yes. They may have
But
been.
yeah, I understand. But they if fixed. Okay.
I know, but
No.
he shouldn't be doing that. We really have to keep the wall here, but we'll
Sorry.
we'll open the public hearing if a question comes up that I can't answer.
Right. So they were operable windows. They were not functioning right, but they had casements on the side that would open.
Yeah, let me find a
crank
better
windows, yeah.
picture.
Okay.
Generally, like in this window on the left, at least one side and possibly two sides would be operable. Generally, the center panel would be fixed. Looking at this larger window, it's generally the two side windows open and the two center portions are fixed.
Because usually when they're operable, the center of it, where it connects to the fixed section, they're a little wider or
It's a little
thicker.
heavier, yeah.
Yeah, but this ones, they all look the same.
That's because steel, the
very
wonderful
thin.
thing about steel windows is their proportions are really elegant and,
Right,
and
okay.
they
Okay.
So in your understanding, these windows would have been rehabilitatable?
They probably would have been, but that's not when we accept the fact that people want to upgrade their windows for energy conservation reasons, and that's, I think, a large part of why the district guidelines were written to allow kind of alternate materials coming in. For a Mills Act property, we'd look at it, I think, very differently than we might in the district.
But
But
if
yeah,
you had
steel
been-
windows are always rehabilitatable,
Right.
almost always.
And if you had been asked, you would have likely said, let's look to see if we can find an in-kind replacement that more accurately replicates what's there.
Well, since I already know.
In kind, not in kind.
Yeah,
I mean,
The profile.
Since I already know that the judgment has to be, like I said before, during this period, it was kind of an either or. For whatever reason, developers and builders said we're going to put in steel windows, we're going to put in wood windows. Those were kind of the two options. So we tend to think that the house is of the period and the style where it could have gone either way. We'll accept kind of the heavier profile of the wood windows. If this had come to me as an application, I think I would have tried to get better profiles, but even the best profile here is going to be significantly different than what was there. So,
Jay, if I can ask a question, might help the commission. Back to Commissioner Garpetian's question in terms of the way the new windows are operating. It sounds like the new windows are casement windows that swing outward in the same fashion as the original steel windows. So if it's not like we've gone from casement windows to double hung windows or sliders. The operation is generally the same, which is another thing we tend to sort of focus on, keeping the operation of the windows
yes.
consistent with the original, even if we're replacing all the hardware and everything. Is it-
Yeah, so the operation type is similar to what was there.
Yeah, at this point in the discussion, my feeling is going toward, because of, if the windows are acceptable from the standpoint of maintaining the contributing status of the property, then fine. But something about the massing of these windows, and maybe it's their color too, does not make me think that shutters would be the best solution either.
And if the shutter issue is something that I think it may have surprised the Sarkeesians. It was something that, as I was really looking at this and thinking about it, I did think there was potential benefit to having them. On a preservation angle and a district angle, it's kind of the least of the issues I think that we're talking about in terms of whether they're there or not there. But I wanted the commission to kind of consider it
No,
as
and I
an
understand
option.
why you would want them there in a minimal traditional house of this type, but now that this alteration has been made, it seems like the sliding scale of moving away from the style of the house, basically, is what's happening, so.
So I'm hearing that Commissioner Vidor thinks that the windows themselves, while not ideal, may be acceptable, but if we do accept them, the shutters would need to go. And I don't know where your colleagues are standing
Yeah,
on that.
and I say that with reluctance because it's like, I feel like I'd like to say, let's look for some other windows, but that's not a practical solution.
Every time we write permits getting rid of steel windows, there's a little piece of me that goes away.
That's not practical. So we need to move on, maybe. I don't know.
Well, I guess what we need to consider is if this was coming to us today for the first time. I mean, obviously, we're trying to be probably a little more lenient because the work's done and the owners put in money and all of that. And so that's one side of it. The other side is, what would have we approved? What should this home be for the next 100 years and generations to come? And if we've lost a piece of history because the minimal traditional is gone, then maybe the right way to vote is the windows are redone with more streamlined profile. The shutters are put back, the irons removed, and put in a more architectural style and minimalist and not very heavy and ornate and caged in on that whole front porch. So, I mean, that's one side where we can start and we can make a motion and see what people think. From there, be more lenient options, obviously. But what are we supposed to do up here? What are We've got guidelines, we've got rules, we've got permits, we've got process, we've got things that needs to be followed. And so I'm happy to make a motion. We can see what happens if
Could I make one comment just to kind of guide the thinking? Mm-hmm. And I alluded to it at the beginning, and I knew this would be an interesting hearing item. But in a district, losing a little bit of history is different in a district than it is on a Glendale Register property. Right. So we have to separate kind of that idea, even though, yes, it's totally valid and it's an important part of why historic districts exist, because mm-hmm. each house is telling a little story about how that neighborhood developed. But the overriding concern is neighborhood character and mm-hmm. how the house fits into the overall character of the district. Mm-hmm. So I just want to put that out as kind of a baseline for thinking about it.
So let me throw out something just for discussion purposes and see what you think. If we're finding ourselves in kind of a quandary with now these heavy framed windows, that the shutters don't really seem to necessarily fit, especially on some of those that large windows. If the home is going towards a more Spanish style, typically in Spanish styles you would have asymmetrical design which would create balance on the home. Does it make sense, again I'm just kind of speaking out loud, does it make sense for the window to wall ratio that's most concerning to me is that front facade and then maybe the side, it's hard to see the side, putting some kind of more Spanish shutters on that window so you get the ratio, maybe on the side one, but on the windows underneath the porch, I think that other facade, maybe you don't have the shutters there. Again, that's an option if we're going to go towards the Spanish style. If we're trying to bring it back to the minimal traditional, then I think you'd go with more streamlined profile windows, and they'd have to be replaced, and you'd put the shutters back, and you'd really bring the.
If I can just.
Can you go to that slide that?
Yeah, I'm trying to, for the front of the house?
Yeah, the front of the house,
that's right.
please.
I was going the wrong way. If I can ask, by Spanish-style shutter, are you talking about more of a paneled solid wood shutter instead of a louvered shutter?
Yes.
Okay.
Sometimes they would have, a cutout in them of just a detail or design, or they may have, but it would be, more wooden panel, but not louvered.
Often it's constructed like a door.
Yes.
So you have two panels, kind of a rail in the center, or two rails, depending on the proportion.
I was trying to see if any of these homes had them in the picture, but.
Also, Jay, do we not have a picture of the house today from the front?
It is a failure
back
of
from
our
the
presentation. We didn't get.
Well, it's hard because the hedges, you can't get
Well, actually, that's
but
true.
from the point of the
far enough
hedge.
Could have gone behind the hedge and tried to get that.
Through the hedge. So I guess I'm just trying to recall if there are, and maybe we can just ask, because without opening the hearing, if there are still shutters on the window at the front under the gable?
there-
Or there's
the
no
shutters are all
shutters
removed.
anywhere?
No,
Right.
not anymore.
Okay.
But Commissioner
I
Shire's
can't
proposal
remember.
would be to bring back the shutters at the south bay that projects toward Grandview, but have no shutters on the other windows.
And maybe one on the other side. Is there one on the north side of the house?
There's
That
on
was,
the
I should
north
say.
side, and then it kind of wraps, there were shutters on both the windows that wrap the corner.
Oh, okay. Yes, so maybe those
I'm
three.
sorry, you're not allowed to, this is a public hearing in the public.
There is no shutters on the building side.
We've already told them
Will
that.
open us for
No, but we've already told them that there are no shutters on the north side, so there are no shutters on the house currently. There were at the time of designation.
Well, or in this picture, you could do these two windows and the one in the front, but not under the porch.
Well, that was the recommendation
Yeah.
from the start, because porches usually don't
Yeah.
have shutters anyway, so.
So how many windows are? It's gonna
There'll be
like
three.
And there's this small, little baby window, they're right there,
There.
which,
I don't know what the
Personally,
commissioners
I'd like
think.
to see shutters of some sort.
Okay.
That's where I'm coming from, I think.
okay, so we have shutters from Commissioner Vartanian, from Commissioner Shire, shutters that are more in the Spanish style at those 4 window openings, or just the one?
I would say the three.
The three, not the little opening?
Not the little, I think that's minor.
Commissioner Morgan is on.
Yeah.
And Commissioner Vidor.
Shutter or not to
Oh,
shutter?
Commissioner Garpetian.
Yeah.
I'll wait for Commissioner to answer.
Well, and I offer that as a, like I say, we've got the hard approach that we would have done day one, and if we're trying to be reasonable, then that's an idea I had.
I will,
I can make a motion at the very strictest, and we can see where we go. Whatever.
No, I think we're going the right direction.
Because it's a changed house.
yeah.
Okay, so as
Change
far as,
the-
so what I'm
try to
hearing
change it
is,
back.
as far as the windows go, the commission can accept the windows that were installed without permits, provided that appropriate shutters in the Spanish style, which would be a solid panel rather than a louvered style, would be installed at the 3 larger window openings. We've already said that the brick removal is okay, so let's move on to the
Okay.
ironwork.
All right. I'll go along with that.
A question about the gates.
Mhm.
Are 6-foot gates allowed in
6 foot high?
6 foot high?
And they would be. There's no code
They're allowed to.
objection to that, yeah.
Okay. Even in
Since it's not,
history.
well, it's not in the setback, and
Yeah, it's not in the setback. There are some issues in terms of emergency egress. I haven't looked at these gates carefully enough. I don't think you're allowed to have a double-cylinder deadbolt on the gate. So that's something building and safety would look at when they're reviewing the
Right.
permit. It's not we don't do the building and safety check, so.
So I think I may be the only person who's not opposed to the 6-foot ironwork. But if we're leaning more towards a Spanish bend, and again, from a safety perspective, that's where I stand.
See what everyone. Some of the options with the ironwork would be to approve as it was installed, to modify the installation to meet whatever criteria the commission thought were appropriate, to remove it altogether and leave the arcade open, or to possibly install new ironwork that met whatever criteria or conditions that the commission thought were appropriate.
And these are secure gates. They're sort of like burglary proof.
I assume so.
They're pretty heavy. I mean, they're solid. But I'd feel secure behind them.
Someone's really skinny might get over the top. Coyotes probably aren't going over the top here, so.
We're in between.
well, I would say, in my opinion, the ironwork should be removed either entirely or modified to be a more appropriate and allow the porch to still feel open and have that architectural balance with the colonnade and some low ironwork on the sides. But I think the main passageway should be completely open. I mean, as the house was designed.
I don't know if we can, just another thought. From my perspective, and again, I'm really coming not only from a safety and security perspective, but the ironwork is highly reversible. We look at levels of reversibility.
It could be a consideration. No, it's not built into the guidelines
Right.
for districts, but
But that's also not why we're here, to allow things that are reversible. It's to protect the integrity of the historic homes. And so I think we have to separate ourselves from the fact that it's done versus what we'd be approving day one and find the balance there.
And I agree with you. I guess I just don't find them personally objectionable. And there are homes in districts. I was driving around my own district today, and there are homes that just happen to have high, wrought iron work on them.
I think the only examples that I see of ironwork being completely enclosing and opening, if you look at the pictures they've provided, it's a single entry passageway, typically arched, or many times if it's in the Spanish arched, it is never an open colonnade porch where you'd have iron filling in every single opening, looking more like a prison. To me, it's more the decorative ironwork on a deeply reset arch to a front door or to a courtyard behind. It's not what this shows. Like if you look at the front picture, like on the left, it's very heavy and I think obtrusive to an open feeling of what this home once had.
I would agree with you from a design perspective that I don't think it's ideal, clearly, from just purely a design perspective. But from my opinion, I think I think taking security into consideration, I still think an onlooker looking at the property from the street would still be able to understand the style of the house, that is greatly intact, and that one could look past the ironwork as a security measure, which is what I'm really looking at it as based on what the owners have put forth.
Sets a precedent, too.
It does.
one compromise would be to bring back ironwork at a lower level. There was ironwork at the time of designation. My guess is it's not original, but it certainly didn't keep it from being a contributor. I don't know about Coyote's jumping abilities or whether that's into the discussion. We're really focusing on the house and what's appropriate. Ironwork on Spanish houses, we see it all the time. Commissioner Shire is correct. It's not usually on arcades, and arcades don't want to have that kind of enclosure. So really, this is something you guys have to kind of express your opinions, try to come up with some level of consensus, and...
Actually, sorry. You want to finish your thought?
That was basically my thought. I think I was going to say, and vote.
Well, okay, so this is before us because, there are a lot of questions and a lot of issues here. But if someone were in a district were to come to the counter and say, I really have these safety and security issues, and I really would like to put up a fence at the front of my house because I'm worried about coyotes or I'm worried about thieves or whatever it might be, how would that be approached? That wouldn't come before the commission.
Yeah, we deal with security grills, not as often as you would think, just in regular design review in Glendale. We have allowed security grills at some points. As far as since I've been here, we've never approved one of those security screen doors over a front door. Maybe at a back door or side door, it's a possibility. In a historic district, if someone came to me and asked to do this work, I would say I can't approve that. We have to take that to the commission. So that would be my view. So.
Well, it is the first time we're looking at it, so I guess it is a point of discussion. I mean, we haven't had something like this come before us.
Perhaps if you get a sense of where your colleagues
I think clearly
are
I'm
sitting
outnumbered.
yeah.
And I'm okay with
Well,
that.
no, I'm not completely sure that there isn't some idea that there might be a middle road, but I heard from everyone, so I just want to make sure you guys have the opportunity to express your thoughts.
Final thoughts, or do we want to take an informal yay, nay, or?
Well, I would just like to know, what is a middle road? I mean, will we put wrought iron halfway up? Would something like what was originally there?
What they can do is they can change the style and keep it 6 feet, but change the style, make it less heavy. I think what they try to do is try to match this with what was approved on the side, on Crestview side. I think that's the only issue we have here, because otherwise you can modify this ironwork and still keep it 6 feet, but yet make it a little bit lighter.
Not for me. The height is part of the issue.
Okay.
Is enclosing the arcade.
Yeah, I don't know that it's necessarily the style of the ironwork that's bothering everyone, or just the fact that it's there enclosing the arcade.
Yeah.
So maybe we need to start with that.
It's the style, its placement in front of the arcade, two things that are not compatible with one another architecturally, and it has the appearance of like burglar bars.
One middle road thought would be, you have two options: modify what's there, or make suggestions in terms of what might be appropriate if you even want to entertain ironwork at the arcade. Modifying what's there, the only obvious solution is to allow the second from the top, the horizontal, to become the top horizontal, and possibly allow these little decorative spikes and curlicues to kind of still ride across the top of that. That would still be a much higher piece of iron than what was there at the time of designation. I'm not sure that I'm necessarily comfortable that it's appropriate on arcades in general, but that would be a compromise. Another would be to cut the base of what's here and bring the design that you see here, if you think the design is okay, down to a height that would create openness at the porch. And still, with these little spiky things, I don't know that animals are going to be jumping over something like this. My experience, which is limited, is that animals don't jump into enclosed spaces. They don't want to be in those spaces because they don't know that they can get out of them. But this is pure amateur observation.
I have no idea.
So there might be a certain level that the commission could be comfortable with.
May I ask a question from my fellow commissioners? If the height of the gates are lowered like to 5 feet, would that make a difference, or because it's all enclosed is the issue?
It's the enclosure. To me, I think it needs to be between 36 and 42 maximum, probably, for it allowing some kind of separation, yet not enclosing it and allowing the arcade to be what it was. So I think it's either entirely removing or it's modifying to a level that it's very low and decorative only.
Okay. Would you, Madam Chair, reopen the public hearing? I would like to ask the gentleman or the lady a question.
Sure. I'll reopen the public hearing.
Mr. Sarkisian, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay.
How do you feel about the iron gate? Because I want to know the intention behind this gate. Is it just a safety issue, or is it you think it goes well with the architectural of the house? Is it the burglary safety issue? Is it the coyotes? If this, because this is what we have to get to a point basically and make a decision here, and we want to be fair, but we want to make sure that you comply with the historic district guidelines as well. My question to you is it more for coyotes, or is it more like you like the way it looks?
Yeah.
Okay. The way it looks is in harmony with the permits we got on 2 gates on Crestview. So the style was approved.
Could I ask, are the gates on Crestview, can you see through the ironwork, or do they have solid backings?
Oh, you can see through.
Can, okay.
You can.
Yeah, I couldn't remember.
Yeah.
Yes, because there is a behind it, because of the pool permit, behind the iron design.
See the
there
wall?
Is, no, there is behind it, it's put mesh. So it's the same design.
So it is obscured.
There's a mesh put behind it because of the, but it's the same design.
I know, I understand that.
Okay, let's assume that the style is exactly the same.
Exactly the same.
Okay, but if you keep the same style, and this is a 4 feet tall or 4 foot tall fence, would that make a huge difference?
I want to answer this. We feel very strongly about this gate height because it's our family that gets attacked when we're out. You know, when it comes to safety of your family, there is no design issue can convince us that that's the right way to go. I feel very strongly about this issue, even because I saw my wife running home shaking like that. I don't want that to ever happen. So that's the main issue is the safety of this property. And I do understand all the conversation about the traditional and the Spanish and stuff. We had conversation in Mr. Platt's office that we spoke about it. It's more Spanish. Minimal traditional came to us as a little bit of also news.
Okay, we don't want to go around the same circle.
Yeah.
I just want to get to a point because.
Okay, any other direct questions?
So can I ask?
Did
Can
you
I
get your
answer the
question
same
answered?
question?
There
Can I answer the
was
same? If I answer the question.
the same question, sure.
I mean, if between 4 feet tall and 6 feet tall, we're talking about 2 feet. But if,
Yes.
Mr. Commissioner, I made a phone call to Glendale Police Department, and I asked them, what's my safety with coyotes? How many feet? Unequivocally, they said you have to have 6 feet for safety. Do you have small children? Do you have pets? Yes, we do. That's the height.
The point I would just to add is because we have the vegetable garden also in the front, and I do spend a lot of time there, and
Which is not behind the gate, mind
that's what
you.
I was going to say.
Yeah,
Vegetable
but
garden
I
has
know,
nothing
but
to do
run.
with.
That's the way I ran into the porch and got protected from the coyote that attacked me twice.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. That was my
Thank
question.
you.
Thank you.
There's no question about windows because we can.
No,
Thank you.
there are no
Explanation.
questions about the windows. We already went through it. They
There
approved
are
the
no
windows, so
wooden windows with such small frames. They don't exist. For you guys to know, we did that research extensively.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you for your
very
much.
comments. Okay, the public hearing is closed. Okay.
I'd be willing to make a motion and we can vote and see where people stand on what I would feel absolutely most comfortable with, as if we were reviewing this home with opportunity to give feedback prior to work being done. And so I'd like to make a motion that we, for the property at 1720 Grandview Avenue, that we legalize and approve the brick removal and the stucco, that the wood windows are redone at a lower profile to match most closely the profile of the steel, that the shutters are brought back in keeping with the minimal traditional, and the iron is either removed or reduced to a height of 36 or 42 inches to keep the open arcade at the front.
Okay, do we have a second? No second? The motion
Can you second,
fails?
no matter how you're going to vote? Can you second
You
just to get
can,
the vote?
yes.
Okay, second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, is that you,
Arminet
Jay?
just left. Commissioner Morgan?
Well, so we are basically taking everything back. We're taking the windows away and putting in windows we're legalizing the veneer. We are
Replacing
replacing the windows with something that's more appropriate to the steel. The shutters, we're bringing back the shutters that originally were there, and then what we had talked to originally about the 3 shutters around the side, that's gone away. And last, we are completely removing the iron gates.
I heard shutters are coming back at the 3 larger window openings.
Well, yeah, there would be shutters as they were in the minimal style in this motion. So yeah, there would be shutters.
Okay, and the iron is removed or reduced to 42 inches or less. Commissioner Morgan?
Thinking. Give me a second. So basically, we're taking away, other than the brick veneer, everything they have.
And just since this is kind of unusual for the commission, this isn't necessarily the last motion. Depending on where the vote goes, we could entertain other motions.
I'm gonna have to pass.
Pass?
No.
Like, no, okay. Commissioner Vidor?
Yeah, no, I
No.
don't think they should have to change the
Commissioner
windows.
Garpetian?
No.
No. Commissioner Shire?
Yes.
And Chair Votanian?
No.
Motion does not pass. Do
Yeah, I'll
we
make a
have-
second.
for trying.
I'd like to make a second motion.
Okay.
For the house at 1720 Grandview Avenue, that we legalize and approve the brick removal and the stucco, that the existing wood windows with their thick profiled frames remain, are approved and allowed to remain, that the shutters are brought back on the 3 windows in more of a Spanish style in keeping with the changes and modifications that the owner has now made, and that the iron gates are removed or minimized at the arcade at a maximum height between 36 and 42 inches.
Okay, do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Hold on. Commissioner Morgan?
Yes.
Commissioner Vidor?
Yes.
Commissioner Garpetian?
Yes.
Commissioner Shire?
Yes.
Commissioner Votanian?
No.
4-1 vote, the motion passes, and we will legalize the veneer. We will legalize the windows that were replaced. We will ask to have new Spanish-style shutters replaced at the 3 larger windows in question, and the iron gates will either be removed or minimized to 36 to 42 inches.
I have a question. What is the process for the iron gates?
We will work at, that is a question. If we're approving this with these conditions, the commission has the opportunity to ask to have it returned to the commission for review, or would allow staff to make judgments to make sure that the work meets the conditions. Thinking in terms of design review board, a decision like this would typically be left to staff because there aren't major kind of issues that you would want to revisit, but that's not, you have that option.
With your recommendation in the staff report, I trust your judgment.
Okay. So staff will then work with the Sarkeesians to meet these conditions. We'll review proposed shutters. We'll work with Building and Safety and Neighborhood Services to legalize the violations and remove the threat of court that is associated with violations. And then we'll work with the Sarkeesians to modify the gates. The commission should also be aware, as should the public and the applicants, that any commission decision is appealable within 15 days from today's hearing to the City Council.
Okay, thank you for that. I'd like to thank everybody from the neighborhood for coming out, the owners as well, and I'd like to thank my colleagues. I thought we were going to have a short hearing, but it turned out to be a good discussion.
What's that?
No, I was saying I thought we were going to have a short hearing, but
I
it
did
turned
too.
out to
So
be
did
a
Armanet,
good
who left me a note
discussion.
saying,
I know,
"You
and
said
we
this
still
would
have
be
a
a short
couple more.
hearing."
I'd like to go home.
Okay.
Well, heated discussions are always fun.
So my carpool partner
Jay
was
likes
saying.
them.
I'll call you tomorrow, so let's talk tomorrow. Of course, yeah. Okay,
Okay.
moving on.
Yes. Item 8, updates and informational briefings. 8A, update on proposed Brockmont Park Historic District. And for the record, do we need to note that Commissioner Vidor has left the meeting
Yes, actually.
for another commitment?
And that was at approximately 7:10.
Thank you.
It's hard to juggle all this. In terms of the proposed Brockmont Park district, I just wanted to let the commission as well as the public know that the initial hearing date, we originally thought we would have had the first city council hearing before tonight so that we would fill you in on the results of that decision. That date has been postponed till Tuesday, March 25th, and that's the evening when council will consider the ordinance bringing the historic district overlay zone change to the Brockmont Park area, which is basically the mechanism to create the historic district. Because this is a zone change, it's a two-part hearing process. So in the first hearing, which is this coming Tuesday at 6 o'clock, council will consider the ordinance. They will take public testimony. So this is very likely the only opportunity for public testimony to be heard in this case. The actual vote on the overlay zone occurs after that hearing. Originally, it was scheduled for April 1st, but that was just postponed as of yesterday or today. The new date is April 8th for the vote, and that's also 6 o'clock in the City Council chamber on Tuesday, April 8th. So that is our update.
And then I was just curious, that just got bumped just because of a heavy agenda? Is that
it's scheduling. It's this vote requires a supermajority vote of council, and there were some vacation schedule issues, and we wanted to make sure that everyone was going to be there.
Okay, and moving on to 8B, which is update on proposed May 2014 Historic Preservation Month events.
And unfortunately, Sean Bursell from the Historical Society left because I cannot remember the date of one of our events. So we'll make sure that they publicize it at the next meeting. The Commission and the City are participating in two specific events for Historic Preservation Month, which will augment our traditional display that we have at the Central Library, where we kind of celebrate all of our designated buildings and historic districts and put up a nice display. On May 10th, which is a Saturday, there's going to be a Civic Center walking tour, which we've talked about before, and we're hoping to have Commissioner participation at the highest level. We're working right now finalizing our tour brochure. Commissioner Vidor has volunteered her time to take some photographs for the brochure. We are going to be starting here at the Municipal Services Building and touring about 18, 19 sites, kind of in a more or less an hour's walk from here. And the Historical Society will have docents available. We'll have a reception afterwards. It will start at 10 a.m. And be finished around 1 with a reception somewhere around noon. We have an exciting surprise awaiting everyone who comes to the reception, which I will not share right now. And so that's basically where we are. Within the next month, I'll be reaching out to all of the commissioners to see what your availability is, what your interest is in helping out, and then also in helping publicize the event. We want to try to get a lot of people coming to the Civic Center because the reason we're doing a tour like this is to share that this isn't only the seat of government, but this really has a lot of the heritage and history of Glendale within just a few blocks where we're sitting. And there's an amazing diversity of historic resources in this area. And I'm excited to get as many people out here to understand that as possible.
Great.
The other event will be a Landmark This, how to get your property designated, which is a similar panel that we've done before with the Historical Society. So I'll be participating in that. And that is a weekday evening that I can't remember, sometime in the month of May.
Great.
Great, thank you.
And the ribbon cutting for Brand Library is on the 27th?
Yes.
Yes,
Thursday,
Thursday, Thursday the 27th, a week from today.
And
10:30.
10:30?
Yeah. And everyone should go because Brand Library is looking really, really amazing, as most of you know. So that sums it up. Let's close our meeting.
We have a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Okay, we're adjourned.
Motion to adjourn at 7:17.